Welcome back to the Gnostic Chef. You guys heard about this project Gateway, the Gateway process? Anybody heard about this? Well, I was going to run through just like some of the classified stuff that's been declassified ever since the 2003. There's a link in the description where you can pick up this file and read through it yourself if you'd like, but I've got it open now, and I was just going to go through some of it. It says, you tasked me to provide an assessment of the Gateway experiment in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. As I set out to fulfill that task, it soon became clear that in order to assess the validity and practicality of the process, I needed to do enough supporting research and analysis to fully understand how and why the process works. Frankly, sir, that proved to be an extremely involved and difficult business. Initially, based on conversations with a physician who took the Gateway training with me, I had to recourse to the biomedical models developed by Itzhak Bentov to obtain information concerning the physical aspects of the process. Then I found it was necessary to dive into various sources from information concerning quantum mechanics in order to be able to describe the nature of the functioning of the human consciousness. I had to be able to construct a scientifically valid and reasonable lucid model of how consciousness functions under the influence of the brain hemisphere synchronization technique employed by Gateway. Once this was done, the next step involved recourse to theoretical physics in order to explain the character of the time-space dimensions and the means by which expand human consciousness transcends it in the achieving Gateway's objective. Finally, I again found it necessary to use the physics to bring the whole phenomenon of outer body states into the language of physical science to remove the stigma of its occult connotation and put it to frame and reference suited to objective assessment. So that's the beginning there. So basically this whole report is based on trying to find where the human consciousness is and where to get or if it's like able to be tapped into in some way. They found that they were able to induce this with drugs and stuff, but for short periods of time. And they would do it with like yogis and people that were deep into meditation, and they found that these people were able to sustain this, forget what they called it, but sustain that moment for 15 minutes solid whenever under no influence of any of these drugs. And they still don't understand what is going on there. But see, number 2 here, I began the narrative by briefly profiling the fundamental biomedical factors affecting such related techniques. Hypnosis. I began the narrative by briefly profiling the fundamental biomedical factors affecting such related techniques as hypnosis, biofeedback, and transcendental meditation, so that their objectives and modes of functioning could be compared in the reader's mind with the Gateway experience as the model of its underlying mechanics was developed. Additionally, the introductory material is useful in supporting the conclusions of the paper. I indicate that at times these related techniques may provide useful entry points to accelerate movement into the Gateway experience. So this is like a whole paper and where they show you exactly how this works. And yeah, like I said, it was declassified. You can pull up the link in the description. 2003, 9/10. So, not sure, that might be the 10th month, 9th day. I'm not sure how they do their date and time there. The study is certainly not designed to be the last word on the subject, but I hope that the but I hope that the validity of its basic structure of the fundamental concepts upon which it is based will make it useful guide for the Unison personal, the USAINSCOM, that's an acronym, INSCOM personnel who are required to take the gateway training or work with the gateway material. So there's the hypothesis according to the theories of the psychologist Ronald Stone and the biomedical engineer models of Bentoff. Hypothesis, or the hypnosis, is basically a technique which permits questions of direct access to the sensory motor cortex and pleasure centers and lower cerebral, which is the emotional portions, and associated pleasure centers of the right side of the human brain following successful disengagement of the stimulus screening functions of the left hemisphere of the brain. The left hemisphere of the brain is the self-cognitive, verbal, and linear reasoning component of the brain. It fulfills the function of screening incoming stimuli by categorizing, assessing, and assigning meaning prior to following passages to the right hemisphere of the mind. The right hemisphere, which functions as the non-critical, holistic, non-verbal, and pattern-oriented component of the brain, appears to accept that the left hemisphere passes to it without question. Consequently, if the left hemisphere can distract either through boredom or through reduction to the sophoric, semi-sleep state, external stimuli to include hypnotic suggestions are allowed to pass unchallenged into the right hemisphere, where they are accepted and acted upon directly. The result may involve an emotional reaction originally in the lower cerebral region, sensory motor response requiring involvement of the cortex, and so on. Both of the sensory and the motor cortex on the right cerebral portions of the brain contain a sequence of points known as the homunculus, which corresponds to the points in the body. I know I'm not saying that right. Stimulations of the corresponding area of the cortex causes an intermediate response in the associated portions of the body. Consequently, induction of the suggestion that the left leg is numb, if it reaches the right hemisphere unchallenged and is referred to the appropriate area of the sensory cortex, will result in an electrical reaction being generated that will induce the cortex, or it will induce the feeling of the numbness. Do you hear that? Similarly, the suggestions that the person is experiencing a general feeling of happiness and well-being will be referred to the appropriate pleasure centers located in the lower parts of the brain in the right hemisphere, thereby inducing these feelings. This is nuts. Number 3 is all about transcendental meditation. On the other hand, transcendental meditation works in directly different fashions. In this technique, intense and protracted, single-minded concentration on the process of drawing energy up the spinal cord ultimately results in what appears to be creation of acoustical standing waves. You hear that? Little diagram there, so you can take a peek. I'm telling you, pull this up. It's in the description. But I feel like that's enough for this one. We could go through some more. There's a lot more here, but I don't want to bore you or keep these videos too long. So bless you for staying, and we'll talk more on this CIA paper later. Bye for now.